Welcome to Section 2, Lecture 4, Elements of Reading Instruction. Before we talk about reading strategies for the 3 stages of reading, I'd like to talk about the key components of reading instruction in general. This will give you a better idea of the kinds of skills that you can work on with your child. When I was going through my graduate program in reading instruction, a lot of people would ask me, well, how much is there to actually know about how to teach reading? And I found out that there's quite a bit. As adults, we're probably not aware of all the processes that are going on as we read. We're just reading automatically. And I don't know about you, but I don't really remember learning how to read. I do know that my parents continuously bring up the story about my first day of kindergarten and how I came home and announced, well, they didn't teach me how to read. Apparently, I had some pretty high expectations for my first day of kindergarten. I love to read, and I've been pretty passionate about it my entire life. So there's a lot that goes on in the reading process. When we read, we look at the letters, and we need to know what those letters are and the sounds that they make. We need to be able to blend those letters together in order to pronounce the word as a whole, which we call the decoding process. And then we need to know the meaning of the word and be able to string a bunch of those words together and understand their meaning as a whole. There are several important skills that we need in order to do all of those things. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about the important elements of the reading process, which we target in reading instruction. These skills include phonological awareness, word identification, vocabulary, and comprehension. These are all the different skills that we need to have in order to read successfully. The first skill is phonological awareness, and this is the awareness of sounds in a language. It's important for children to have an understanding of the relationships between letters and sounds, and this is the first step in acquiring that understanding. Phonological awareness is the ability to identify different words in a sentence, understand how words can be broken down into their separate parts, and being able to identify how words are similar or how they are different. This is a skill that we really focus on in the early stages of reading, even before children learn the letters of the alphabet. There are a number of abilities that fall under this umbrella of phonological awareness, and these skills have to do with breaking words apart into their separate sounds, rhyming, or identifying the different sounds in a word. The first skill that we'll talk about is breaking words into syllables. If I say the word sunshine and ask you to clap as you say each syllable or word part, you would say sunshine or sunny, sunny. Rhyming is another skill that we focus on. This includes being able to identify whether or not words rhyme or if they have a similar ending, or be able to supply a rhyming word when given a target word. So a child with sufficient phonological awareness would be able to tell me that pat and ice do not rhyme. And if she were given the word pat, she would be able to tell me words that rhyme with it, such as mat, bat, or cat. Another skill is phonemic awareness, which is the ability to detect specific sounds in words. There are several different tasks that are involved with phonemic awareness. First, it's being able to identify the first, middle, or last sound. For example, I can say the word mug and ask a child to identify the first sound, which is or the last sound, which is g. Another skill is being able to manipulate or change the sounds in a word. For example, if I ask you to take away the first sound of the word mat, you would answer at. Or I could ask you to change the beginning sound of mat to a p sound, and you would answer pat. Phonemic awareness also includes being able to identify words with similar sounds. For instance, if I give you 3 words, mat, me, and tap, and ask you which 2 words begin with the same sound, you would answer mat and me. Or if I give you 3 words, stop, tap, and ball, and ask you which words have the same final sound, you would answer stop and tap. You'll notice that all of these skills have to do with oral language, hearing and saying the sounds and the words. Children don't have to be able to read or even know the letters of the alphabet to start working on these skills. We usually focus on these skills when children are in preschool and kindergarten. And this is important for learning phonics, which is one way to learn to identify words. Phonics is a system in which we learn to read or decode words through learning the relationships between letters and their sounds. The act of decoding is actually the process of translating the printed word that we see on the page into a sound. So we are pronouncing that word that we see written down, or we're reading the word out loud. Two of the ways in which we learn how to decode words are through phonics and learning sight words. So again, in phonics, we're learning the relationships between letters and their sounds. Once we know the sounds of the letters, we can then put those sounds together to pronounce the word. If you see the word and you know each letter of the word and the sound that it makes, you can sound it out by pronouncing each sound. K, a, t, and then blending those sounds together. Cat. In phonics, we learn the sounds of all the letters. We learn the difference between consonant and vowels and the different sounds that they make. The vowels A, E, I, O, U have short and long sounds. Short vowel sounds are the sounds we hear in cat, egg, igloo, top, and cup. Long vowel sounds are the sounds we hear when we pronounce the name of the letter: cake, eat, ice, hope, and cute. Then we learn the different ways consonants and vowels sound when they appear together in a word. For instance, a consonant blend is a combination of two consonants in a word, and each letter has its own pronunciation. So these words begin with a consonant blend: free, blue, dream, or play. Consonant digraphs are two consonants that appear together in a word, but they have a single sound. The letters C and H together sound like ch, as in chat or church. We see digraphs in words such as shoe, phone, them, or where. We also teach different vowel patterns and their sounds. For instance, we have the EA vowel pattern, which has a long E sound in words like eat, meet, or heat. But it can also have a short E sound, or like sweat, or breath, or weather. Another example is the O and U together. The OU vowel pattern has different sounds. It can have the ow sound in words such as sound or shout. It can have an oo sound, like in the words soup or group. It can also have a long O sound, like in the words though or soul. Or it can have an R-controlled sound, like in for or course. I'm not going to go into much more detail about phonics because it's really a course all by itself, and there are a lot of different rules and patterns that we learn. But just remember that it's all about the relationships between the individual letters or the letter patterns and the sounds that they make. Once we understand these relationships, we can use that knowledge to identify words by sounding them out. Now, there are a lot of words that don't really fit into any specific letter patterns, so they can't be sounded out, and we teach these words as sight words. Sight words are words that children memorize so that they can just automatically pronounce or decode them as soon as they see them. When they know these words, they don't have to stop and try to figure them out, which just makes reading smoother and easier. There are two types of sight words that we learn: words that don't fit into any specific phonics pattern and can't be easily sounded out, and then common words that children are going to see over and over when they read. For instance, the, have, this, of, to, people, because, around. Sight words like that. It can also include things like names or days of the week or the names of the 12 months. There are two common lists of sight words that teachers use in the classroom. One is the Dolch list, which has 220 words, and Fry's list, which has about 1,000 words, and it goes up from kindergarten through the 5th grade. I've included a couple of links to websites you can go and print out lists of sight words for your child's grade level. Your child's teacher is probably including these words in their spelling and vocabulary lists, but I thought I would give you this resource if you want a more comprehensive list. Next, we have vocabulary. When we talk about vocabulary, we're talking about new words that children should learn. They're usually given a list of vocabulary words at school, which they need to define, and then write a sentence using each word. In the larger picture, when we talk about vocabulary, we're talking about the body of words that we know. So typically an older child is going to have a larger vocabulary than a younger one. There's a lot of research that has been done about the best ways to teach vocabulary because it's such an important part of reading. Traditionally, vocabulary words were taught in isolation, just how we talked about. Children would get a list of words every week that they would have to define, use in a sentence, and then be tested over them. Research shows us that we learn words best when we're continuously using them in conversation or writing, and when we see them over and over again. We remember words that we can somehow relate to or that become a part of our own experience. So I think it's important to look for opportunities to teach kids new words, not just when we're reading to them, but anytime they come up in conversation or when you're watching TV or when you're going online. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is comprehension. This is basically our ability to understand what we're reading. Some children may be able to read or decode the words in a text, but they may not fully understand what they're reading. So this is a very important concept, because if we can't understand what we read, then there's no point. It has no meaning or purpose. So we really do place a lot of emphasis on comprehension in reading instruction, and we teach comprehension strategies to help children understand what they read. It's very easy to test comprehension by asking children questions about what they're reading. And I'll discuss more of this in depth in section 5 when I talk about the after reading strategies. All of these concepts are important elements of reading, and when children have trouble in any of these areas, their reading skills are affected and reading may be more difficult for them. So you can teach these concepts whenever you read to your child. Remember that just working 5 to 10 minutes a day on one skill can really make a difference, and incorporating it into your story time is a fun way to do this. You can also find out from your child's teacher what they're working on in the classroom and if there are any areas that your child needs to focus on in particular, and then focus on those skills whenever you read at home. So for instance, if I see that my child is learning the long O sound of words that are spelled with O and A together, like boat, coat, or moat, I would make a special effort to point out those words anytime they appear in our story. And I'll be going into more of that in section 4, but I just want to give you some idea of how you can take what your child is learning at school and continue the instruction at home. So let's do a quick review on the elements of reading instruction. We have phonological awareness, which is the ability to identify sounds and words, and it focuses on oral language. Word identification skills focus on decoding or pronouncing the written word. 2 ways in which we learn to decode are through phonics, which is the relationships between letters and their sounds, and sight words. Sight words are words that children memorize so that they can read them automatically. There are 2 ways we can think about vocabulary. First, it's the body of words that we know as a whole. And second, vocabulary instruction focuses on new words that children learn the meaning of and then are able to use in their speaking and writing. Comprehension is understanding what we read and is crucial to the reading process. Children need to develop their skills in each of these areas in order to be successful readers. Consider these elements as you read with your child, and remember that working on one skill for just a few minutes a day can make a huge difference in your child's reading abilities. So with that, happy reading. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture.